Louisiana, and we are or just outside of Biloxi, Mississippi. And this is 90, Federal Route 90, not interstate, because Interstate 10 does the really fast thing. This is what Interstate 10 replaced, I assume. And look at this, it's just gorgeous. You're just driving along the coast, you know. I've been looking forward to doing this in California with one, which I don't think is Interstate 1. I think it's... So there are all these places along 90 where you can just pull off and enjoy the beach and the dunes and catch a wave, I guess. I don't see anybody out in the Gulf of Mexico catching a wave. Maybe that's not how the Gulf of Mexico works, what do I know? But I love that it's just all this open beach and all you have to do is pull over your car and, you know, check it out, spend the day on the beach. They've at least got grasses growing along here, so hopefully that's helping all the buildings that are on the opposite side of the road. Maybe you can see some of those in the video. They clearly look like kind of beachy houses where the first level is not meant to be lived on. They're all up off the ground a little bit. And all the pastel colors that I just love about beach properties. There's a Walmart, you know. I don't know if you can public camp along this beach or not. iOverlander seems, it's a website that those of us who live in our vehicles tend to use to find safe places to park overnight. And I did see a lot of primitive campsites along here, so it's possible that you could just pull over, camp on the beach, nobody cares. I recently discovered from being down on Padre Island that sand is gross. I mean, I love walking in it. It makes my feet feel fabulous. But as a person who lives in a van, not so sure I want to spend a lot of time at sand beaches because the sand gets everywhere. And I can't speak for this patch of beach, but on Padre Island at least, there was a steady wind blowing in off the Gulf the entire time. Well, it picks up the wind and blows it into your car. And so I had grit in my teeth from just it blowing everywhere. I've changed the bedding twice since then, and I still have sand in my footboards, but in my WeatherTech mats. I'm kind of leaving it there though because I want to harvest it and put it in a jar. I have these tiny little bottles with vial lid stoppers that I permanently glue in, and I label where the sand came from. It takes like a quarter teaspoon of sand per vial. They're tiny. They come from the craft store. Well, I haven't looked in my craft bag to find it to bottle up the Padre Island sand. I will. I just haven't yet. And it's just so beautiful being along this drive. And I think people in the Midwest don't get a chance to see how big water can be. I mean, you can go up to Lake Erie and you can kind of get a glimpse of it there because that's some seriously big water. But nothing on the scale of what the Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic coast, the Pacific coast. And I love being where water is. I found Louisiana so comforting in that way. Aside from the people being so friendly, just being surrounded by all that swamp and marsh and delta and Mississippi River and Gulf of Mexico, and just the amount of water in that place brings me so much peace and happiness. I could definitely see myself, if I were to take up that snowbirding life where I live up north where it's cold in the summer and then live down south where it's moderate in the winter, I would absolutely live in Louisiana. Texas? No, not so much. Lots of cool things going on in the part of Texas that I was in, but the people didn't seem nearly as genuinely welcoming and community-minded and inclined to help one another. And I don't mean my family. I mean, they are that way in a lot of ways. I mean, like, people. Like, I went out and delivered food to people and played board games with people and went to museums and asked strangers questions on the street. And in general, the people in the Houston area were nowhere near the level of helpful and reaching out and being communicative and telling jokes and just generally being lighthearted, good, solid people, as everyone I met in Louisiana was. And we had one guy get kind of political. He had some opinions about some things, largely in alignment with mine, but you could tell that he was very, what's the word I'm looking for? Strident in his opinions. But even then, he was still super helpful, just a little more gruff, but just a really capital kind of dude. I also want to give a quick shout out to Rudy, so that I don't forget his name. Rudy was our captain on the boat ride that I took down Bayou La Fourche. I'll have to look up the name again. He was like born in Thibodaux, raised in Thibodaux, lived his whole life in Thibodaux, and now he's a captain on that little chunk of bayou on a volunteer basis with the National Park Service. And he was just such a nice guy. Now, maybe this is just the standard Southern hospitality. We just want you to think we're nice, but I don't get that vibe from Louisiana. Where I did get that vibe from some aspects of Houston. The gentleman I met here in Mississippi just now at the laundromat, he was real kind and, cracking jokes and being friendly, and I just really loved that. I could see myself spending winter here. I really don't want to be here for hurricane season, and I don't want to be down here for summer. I think it's way too hot already, and it's still May. I should be enjoying the weather in May, not regretting my life choices in May. I'm presently regretting my life choices, so... it's just so ghastly warm. Ugh. But that's okay. Gulfport, we are in Gulfport. We're not quite to Biloxi yet, I guess, for Gulfport. But yeah, so I wanted to show you guys some of what the coast of the Gulf of Mexico looks like here in Mississippi. This is just beautiful. Now, I have no idea what all that is out there. I assume that's, trying to get oil out of the ocean. I don't know what's going on over there. But the sand is what I wanted to show you. The sand and the palm trees, and it's just lovely. And this seems to follow the coastline pretty much all the way to Mobile. Also want to give a shout out to my aunt. Hi, Aunt. She is from Greenville, Mississippi, which is like way up the Mississippi River from, so back behind us where the Mississippi River it's still there, but we're not. And then way up along the Mississippi River till you get to like the northern part of Mississippi. That's where she's from. But hey, I'm in your state. She doesn't live there anymore. She's lived in Ohio my entire life, I think. And, but I believe she's still got family down here. So, hey, maybe I met a family member at the laundromat. I don't know. But look at this. The sand's like on the road. What is that? I love it. Love it. Love it. And I love all the buildings up on stilts. And, yeah. I think I missed my calling. In another life, I was probably a beach bum or something. That's my favorite thing to do when I was in Boston, too, was to drive along the coast and look at all the beaches and little beach communities. And even in the winter, and let me tell you, North Atlantic beach in the winter is some deep, dank, wet, cold. And I love it. I love it. I don't want to swim in it. I did that. It's cold. I would do it again for money. And this is the fabulous city of Gulfport. Callie's doing okay today. She's hanging out in the carrier, because when we drive, I try to keep her in the carrier. She's a little mad at me, miffed at me right now, because I also kept her in the carrier the whole time I was in the laundromat. And it wasn't any kind of punishment or anything. She wasn't her fault. But part of what I was doing in the laundromat was taking the bed apart and doing all of the bedding and putting the bed back together with fresh linens and the whole bit. And to keep her claws off of the air mattress that I sleep on, I just kept her in her carrier. But then, even then, I had to move her around a whole bunch. Yeah, we're back to the beach. And so she's a little disgruntled that she got moved around so much. I just love it. Love it, love it, love it. So I'm also trying to spend some time thinking about what I want the identity of this channel to be like. Because I want it to be truthful to me and who I am and how I go about in the world. But I've noticed that a lot of people, when they're doing van life, the channels that seem to get the most views are the ones where we're really talking about why. And what is your why? And my why is to see things like this. I mean, you just don't see a long stretch of open beach and water like this where I'm from. And where I was from was Great Lakes region, Wisconsin, then Ohio, then Boston. And you do have this kind of coast in Boston, and that's part of where I fell in love with it. You've got it down here on the Gulf of Mexico, and I'll play you some more of the sounds from Padre Island, just so you can hear what this would sound like if I were to stop driving. But I also like thinking about concepts like home. Home is it's something I think about on a regular basis. Like, what counts as home? What do people call home? Is home a building, or is it a sense within yourself, or is it a geography? There are so many different ways to define home. And I think to a certain extent, I don't know that I have felt like I was home or had home. And I know a lot of people, like this gentleman from Thibodaux that I met. For him, Thibodaux is home. Both his own personal home in Thibodaux, the home where he grew up in Thibodaux, the home that he lives in now in Thibodaux. I didn't ask him if those were the same place, but they might be. It's clear that he strongly identifies with the place and the people and the culture and the traditions of Thibodaux, Louisiana. And I can't say that that's ever been true for me, for Wisconsin, for Boston, for Columbus. I've never had that. And I have friends who like going to the same restaurant day after day after day. So they become familiar. They become a fixture within the community. That's, oh, he's here every Friday night and he always gets the, bowl of mayonnaise and fries. Shout out to my friend Griffin, who used to eat an entire bowl of mayonnaise with his steak fries at a restaurant where he was well known by the property owners because he was there so often. Oh, people are racing kites out there. Check it. Kites on the ocean. I don't know how well you can see those, but there they are. Nice. We're still in Gulfport? Good grief. How long is Gulfport? I see now why the mapping thing wanted me to take 10. This is just prettier. You don't really care what the mapping system wants. Much rather drive 90. Much rather. Where was I going with that? Right, and so there's nothing I want to eat so often that I want to become a regular anywhere. And so I've always sort of had this sense of home within myself, that home was, there's a song, "Wherever I lay my hat, that's my home." And I understand that. Wherever my bed is for the night, that's home. And I have been at some homes where I did not feel welcomed. I have been at other homes where I felt like I couldn't stay long enough. Because for me, it really is wherever I'm going to be horizontal for the night. And so right now, my car is my home. When I'm at a hotel, that's my home. When I'm in a tent, that's my home. So home is definitely a thing that I carry within me. But it also means that I tend to identify with nomadic cultures. And by that, I'm not necessarily talking about the Romani people who we refer to as gypsies, which, by the way, is a derogatory term, and don't refer to Romani people that way. But that was a group of people that most people know about, that people are aware that this group of people existed, and they traveled, and they had cute wagons, and there's a whole mystique about the Romani people. And while I am interested in their story, theirs is not the only story I'm interested in. There were multiple Native American tribes, so First Nations people here in the United States, that were migratory. The reason teepees, and I forget which specific tribe teepees were tied to, but part of why a teepee instead of like a mud hut or a grass hut is because you could take those sticks and lay them out like a travois and have a point stick and all the other sticks overlapping it, put your canvas or hide or whatever on top of it, carry all your worldly goods on it, hook it up to a horse, and you could carry that home anywhere you needed to go. Whether you were looking for more things to harvest, or maybe you were chasing the fish, or perhaps you were following a herd of buffalo, whatever, you had the ability to pack up your home and leave. You probably didn't want to do it all the time, but maybe seasonally you might. Sure, that makes sense to me. Another group of people whose stories I find fascinating are the westward expansion in the United States. The people who had the opportunity to get a parcel of land, and so they left wherever they were on the coast, like Massachusetts and that vague area, and just started going west until they found a different place that felt like home to them, that had the kind of soil they were looking for, or the stream they wanted, or the Indians they were willing to work with. Or they ran out of their last mule, or their wagon broke down, or whatever. Or they struck gold, who knows. But what I like are not the stories of where they settled at, but the stories of how they traveled. I love hearing about that life on the wagon train, the life of crossing the prairies, because that was yet another people within the history of the United States that were very nomadic. There was also a time when carpetbaggers were a thing in the U.S. This was largely people moving from hopping on the rails and going to, what is that? Gotta steal to eat, gotta eat to live, tell you all about it when I got the time. And so to have that group of people, and hobos, I'm into train hobos because A, trains, and B, people who are just traveling the United States by hopping on a cargo train and just going wherever the rails took them next. Sometimes for work, sometimes just to see it. Because if you walk across the United States, yeah, you might eventually see it, but man, that's a long walk. Whereas if you hopped on a train, you could see it roll by as you were going through the countryside. And maybe you found a place that you're like, this looks like home, and like I could safely jump off here. You know, having one time when I was like 10 or 11, jumped on a cargo train. As I saw my nephew do it, or not my nephew, my cousin. I saw my older cousin do it, and I'm like, anything you can do, I can do better. I jumped on also. Now, he was smart and jumped right off. I was scared and didn't want to jump right off. But the train started going faster, and I had no idea where it was going to go. So I did eventually jump off the cargo train I had hopped. I found a large patch of weeds where I was pretty sure I wasn't going to die if I jumped off. But let me tell you, overcoming the fear of jumping off a moving train when you're like 10 is, that's a thing. Yeah. And I love that I did that as a kid. I love that I can say that I hopped on a cargo train and rode it and then hopped off. Now, if I rode it a mile, I would be shocked. And it was pulling out of a mill, so I know it was going super slow when it left, and it was probably still going super slow when I jumped off of it. But, you know, I was, it doesn't look good. Yikes. But I was tiny, and so, to me, a mile was forever, and a train is tall. So anyway. But yeah, I like the stories of the hobos who rode the rails all over. I liked Jack Kerouac's story. I seem to recall that Kerouac also did the hop on a motorcycle and ride all over. Che Guevara, that's how he got started, was he hopped on a motorcycle and just rode and saw his country and saw what was happening to the people in his country. And it's too easy to stay in your own backyard and never encounter anyone else or any other way of thinking or any other way of being in the world. And I love that travel exposes you to all of those opportunities.